Friday. We're here. We made it, guys. Photography Friday. Before we start the video, the hat. I know. Okay? I know. So, back to what we were talking about. Photography Friday. Photography Friday. We'll talk briefly about nothing too deep here today for the first installment of Photography Friday. We'll talk about the big three of photography. What is the big three of photography? The biggest three things you're gonna need. We're also gonna talk the importance of shooting on manual mode. I know this is a controversial topic for many people, but it is a very important conversation to have. Should you shoot on manual? Should you shoot on auto settings? We'll find out. Also, why did I get into photography? It is my table, right? So we'll talk briefly about why I got into photography, why I still take photos, and what the true definition of a photographer is. The true definition of a photographer. Well, simply put, the actual definition of a photographer, if you look it up, is just a person that takes photos. Literally. That is it. Someone who uses some type of photographic instrument or camera or phone. Anything. That is what makes you a photographer. And everyone that says otherwise is just not being nice. See, the thing about art is it's subjective. So some people are going to like some of the stuff you do, and some people are not. And that's okay. Just keep doing you. Keep doing what makes you happy in the photography world. If you like black and white, just do black and white. If you like really grainy photos, take really grainy photos. Realistically, it's your world. How you see it, and you determine how you want to shoot it. So don't ever let anyone tell you that you can't do something. God, that sounds... I feel like Will Smith. Wow. But in all seriousness, yes, it is important to know your settings. It is important to know why you want to shoot photos, why you want to get into photography. But realistically, it's really, really important to know what you want to do with it. Is this going to be a hobby? Do you want this to be a business? Is this going to be a profession? Which is kind of almost the same thing as a business. But realistically, what do you want to do with photography? It's up to you, right? So those are some things that you, if you're a photographer starting out, or sometimes it even happens to the best of us who have been doing it for a little while, we ask ourselves, why am I here? Why am I still doing this? Right? And you'll determine some of the things that you like to do, some of the things you don't like to do, some of the good experiences you've had, some of the bad ones, and you'll get to sift out and see kind of where you want to go in this world. There's a lot of different types of photographers, just like there's a lot of different types of people, and there's many ways to get the job done. But it's really important to know, if you are going to do this as a profession, if you are going to do this as a business, to learn from other people's mistakes. Like, I made so many mistakes starting out in photography, like countless, so many. Not knowing my lighting, not knowing what ISO is, not knowing my f-stop, not knowing what exposure is, not shooting on manual on big jobs, and shooting on automatic modes. And then when lighting changed, I didn't know really what to do or what settings to put it on. What is aperture? So AP mode, right? Aperture priority. What does that mean? If I don't know what aperture is, then how am I gonna know why is it being prioritized? Those are important things to know when you shoot on auto. But again, there's nothing wrong with shooting on auto. So I kind of jumped the fence there, right? We're talking about a lot here, so it's difficult for people. But you have to know your tools. Imagine if a doctor walked into a surgery room, right? And he said, okay, so I should know how to use the scalpel, but I'm really comfortable using scissors. So to penetrate this person's skin and cut them open for this surgery, I really want to use kitchen shears. I feel most comfortable. It's what I practice with. It's what I know. It's not going to cut it, literally, or for analogy purposes, cut it. You got to know your settings. You got to know what you're doing. Even if you want to shoot on just auto, you still have to know what you're doing with what settings and what they mean. It's very important. You don't want to ruin someone's special, perfect moment. Some people feel like, well, you'll ruin it if you're trying to change your exposure and you're trying to get No. Realistically, if you keep practicing, you'll get to know these settings like the back of your hand. I hate that analogy, but it's true. You will. You'll get to know it very well. You'll familiarize yourself with it, and it'll be super easy. You'll know how to just look at a room and say, okay, I know what my aperture is supposed to be. I know how to set my f-stop and my ISO. Okay, I know what I need here. Do I want the black to be blurry, right? Do I want a really nice bokeh effect for this? Or am I doing a group photo where bokeh probably would be irrelevant because I have to put a whole bunch of people in one picture? And if I use a lot of bokeh, what's gonna happen? Most of those people will be blurred out. These are things you learn also with experience, but also a little trial and error. Yeah, but so enough talking, enough lollygagging. Let's get into the videos. The three major things that you need as a photographer. The three major skills, the three major things you must remember that will always be necessary to your photography journey, that you'll always need in your pocket, in your mind pocket, as it were, to have so you can take out and you can use at your disposal whenever you need it. We'll get into that right now. So, at number one, we have our shutter speed. Our shutter speed controls our motion. The lower or slower the shutter speed, the more blurry the image will be. The faster the shutter speed, the more in focus things will be. So people in sports photography use that. Number two is aperture. Number three is ISO or ISO. I probably spelled aperture wrong. Sorry about that. So this usually goes by seconds. So for instance, I'm using an example 1 of 200 seconds. So that's pretty high. So, like I said before, slow shutter speed, blurry. High shutter speed or fast shutter speed, not so blurry. Aperture, f, or the f-stop as people say, f.2.8, and that can go all the way to 16. And then here, what that means basically is just simply the lower our f-stop or the smaller our aperture, the blurrier the image will be. The higher the aperture, the less blurry it'll be. So high aperture for group photos, low aperture for detailed portraits if you want things blurry in the background. ISO, a lot of new cameras can go even up to 20,000 and as low as 50, which is pretty awesome. So ISO is pretty simple. Lower the ISO, the darker the image. Higher your ISO, the brighter the image. Very, very simple. Easy to understand. That's pretty much it for ISO. But all these things are interchangeable. You cannot just use one on its own and expect for your photos to come out great and sharp. You have to use all three at the same time. If you have a good shutter speed and good ISO with a bad aperture, your photo's not gonna come out the right way. But if you have a really, really, really good aperture and your ISO is pretty decent, but your shutter speed is not in the way, not in the right place, your photos might be really blurry and you might not achieve what you're looking for. I apologize about the street racers in my neighborhood. Sorry. But those are just the basics of the photos. And I'll give you guys some example in my photo book now. So we see here, I really had a low f-stop because I want to blur the images in the back. Same thing here. Medium ISO, low f-stop. I wanted to blur the images in the background. Same thing here. This guy is the focal point. I blurred him out, but I had a medium ISO, pretty low. My aperture was about the same. I wanted these two colors to pop out, so my f-stop was low, but my ISO was medium as well. Same thing here, completely blurred out. And here, low ISO, low f-stop. Here, my f-stop is really high, because everything is detailed there, so that's important. Low f-stop, blurry buildings. Here, high f-stop, very detailed. There, blurry background, low f-stop. You get it now? High f-stop, very detailed. And I used the paper roll in the background so I didn't have to worry about blurring out the background. But a high f-stop so I could get all those details. Same thing here, all these photos were taken on the same day. Same thing here, high f-stop to get the detail on the phones, capital C's, McKinnon. Here I wanted to get the beautiful New York architecture, so I used the high f-stop so I can get all the details of the buildings in the background. Same thing here, but here I use a low f-stop, do you see? So I can get some of that picture, the beautiful colors in the background, but also the contrast and the blurriness in the background. Here I wanted to get the reflections in the window. So I used a medium f-stop, low ISO. See? So hopefully if you can remember those 3 things, you can write them down. I also put a link in the description. I'll put a link to a video that helped me when I first started out that was super helpful. And this guy's amazing. And it's great information. Probably explains it 1,000 times again. And it's really good. It's really, really good stuff. So I'll link that into the description. And yes, I turned my hat around because I couldn't stand to see it anymore. I couldn't stand to look in the reflection and see that team that's been doing what they've been doing and doing what they're doing in my heart every game. See you guys Monday.